Absolutely. And again, we have had one warning before this, a tornado warning. That was for Conway and Mayflower. That rotation wasn't nearly as tight. And now for all of us who are tuning in and listening, of course, I know March 31st is very recent in our minds here. I will tell you what we saw on radar in March 31st was completely different than what we're watching right now. We don't want to not take this seriously. However, it's when we saw our debris indicator, it indicated debris. We saw that tornado on the ground. We don't have anything confirmed with this, but we are seeing rotation. So we do have this tornado warning until 12:15. This is radar indicated only. We're not seeing that rotation that was off the charts like what we did back in March, but this is still a serious situation. We still want you to be in your safe place because this storm could still produce a tornado, and we're noticing that rotation for it. Could at the very least be producing some hail. That's what this gray is that Juliana had switched us over to, and that lines up pretty much right on track for where we're noticing the strongest area of that storm and where that rotation is. Again, this is just outside of Haskell. This is going to be crossing over onto 67 and the I-30 and then making its way farther north and east toward Benton and Bryant. And let's get another track on this as this continues to move farther northeast at 50 miles per hour. It's going to be arriving into Benton and Bryant in a bit here. I'd say closer to the next half hour. Bryant, we're looking at an arrival time of 12:28, as long as that rotation stays in place, and then that's going to be the arrival time for you. Alexander, 12:38, Shannon Hills, 12:44, East End, 12:50, Rosedale, closer to 1 a.m. Little Rock, again, if this holds up, then we're looking at a little bit after 1 a.m. I want you to go ahead and have your safe place ready in case we do end up having a warning issued for us as far as the tornado warning is concerned, because this is still a serious situation. We're still noticing some of that rotation. However, it does look like it's loosened up just a little bit, and this is just outside of Haskell still. I know our reading here not super great, but still enough rotation that we want to keep our eyes on this, and that's really riding along I-30 here. So Benton, you're going to be up next. Bauxite, you still need to be into your safe place. Same deal for Bryant. So we're going to go through Benton, then Bryant, then Alexander, then the southwest side of the town, then eventually into Little Rock here after 1 a.m. We are expecting the strongest and most potent portion of this storm to move through. So again, we do have a tornado warning here until 12:15. It is 12:03 a.m. if you are joining us now. Arkansas Storm Team is breaking into regular program about if they're going to let this one expire at 12:15. But since we do have that new severe thunderstorm warning, those are always good signs that they might not extend that one. And just because of what we're seeing on the scan as well, it looks like it could start to be losing strength. I looked at hail a little bit earlier because I wanted to see if maybe some of that hail was lining up with where that rotation is. And it does look like there could be some pockets of hail. So if you do live in Benton, Bryant, or within this polygon, while we are looking at these damaging wind gusts and that rotation that is still there, you could also be dealing with some hail. So that's why we talk about getting away from those windows, being in your safe space. You're probably hearing some pings on your roof of that hail coming down, because this, in addition to the tornado warning, they warned it for 1.25 inch size hail. So a little bit bigger than a quarter is what we will be seeing with this. But so far, no talk about canceling it earlier or continuing it a little bit extended. But we do have that new severe thunderstorm warning that's going to be just a little bit extended, and that goes into portions of the metro as well. Let's get a timeline on this one so we can see when this is going to be moving in. That's going to be going until 12:30. So it extends just a little bit farther than what that tornado warning is. But of course, we do still have that tornado warning. I'll zoom in a little bit for you so you can see exactly where that cell is and where we're seeing that rotation. Still picking up on a little bit of rotation. You can see that red and green where it's meeting. It's still a little bit of the blue. However, not quite as bright as what we saw earlier, but it looks like it's pretty much riding very close to about where I-30 is right now. Carmen? Yeah. Yeah, and that does look like it's falling apart a little bit. Notice how these are not right on top of each other. They're not super close together. We like to see that. Now, if you are tuning in right now, it's 12:05. I am getting some text messages and some reports here that the sirens are going off in West Little Rock and Hillcrest. Here's the thing. If you're hearing sirens in Little Rock, we do not have a tornado warning in effect that includes us in Little Rock or West Little Rock. But we do have a tornado warning just outside of Little Rock. So those sirens are going off right now where we have this tornado warning because we do have rotation, and that could indicate that a tornado could come out of this. So that's why those sirens are going off, to alert you that we have the potential for a tornado, and that danger is imminent because we are seeing that rotation on radar. Now, the good news is with these last couple of scans, we've noticed that loosening up. So it does look like that rotation is starting to fall apart some. So that's good news. But we're still dealing with this very nasty line. And really, the most potent part of it is just outside of Benton. And again, where we're getting that rotation is right here, basically at the juncture of 67 and I-30 outside of Haskell. So we want to focus on this spot right here between Haskell as well as Benton. You could see where that was on radar, and velocity, which really shows us where we have any sort of rotation, really copies that as well. So this validates what we're seeing on radar. So what this confirms is that we still have a little bit of rotation, but again, this is starting to weaken some, and we do like to see that. That's some good news, but this is still dangerous and still a very serious situation. This is going to continue to track farther north and east. So hopefully you are hearing sirens in Bryant as well as Benton, because you are under this tornado warning until 12:15. It is 12:07 currently. I know it's late at night. It's very difficult to see anything out there. Even if we were to see a funnel cloud or tornado, it would be difficult to see. These nighttime events are particularly dangerous because I would imagine most of your friends and family members, they're probably asleep right now. But here's the thing. If they live over into Benton, Bryant, parts of Saline County, I want you to call them and wake them up and make sure that they are in a safe spot, because we're still noticing some rotation with this. We don't want anybody to freak out here because this is radar indicated, but we do want you to take this very seriously and take the proper precaution, because we could have a tornado come out of this storm still. And we're still noticing some of that rotation that will continue to track farther north and east around 50 miles per hour. Bauxite, Bryant, Alexander, you'll be up next, and this is traveling essentially along I-30, so it'll be making its way up into Mablevale shortly, and then eventually closer to Little Rock as we head over the course of this hour. Really not expecting the strongest part of the storm until after 1 a.m. for us into Little Rock. And again, this scenario is not like what the scenario was back in March, but we are noticing rotation in these thunderstorms. We still want to take this seriously, and we still are concerned about some of that rotation. Notice this whole line is warned with severe thunderstorm warnings as well. That includes Cabot. That includes Searcy. You are under severe thunderstorm warnings. We have that tornado warning again until 12:15. It's 12:09. Now that we are within that 5-minute time frame of that expiration, and it doesn't expire, then this will likely hold out until 12:15. So we'll still have those sirens going on until 12:15. I'm not hearing sirens in the studio, but again, if you're in Little Rock, West Little Rock, I have heard reports that you are hearing them. You'll probably still hear them until 12:15 based off of this warning. That's my projection here. Juliana, have you noticed any sort of reports with this as this continues to push farther north and east?
So far, we haven't gotten any reports, which is some good news that we haven't had anything as far as at least reported wind damage, since we do still have a little bit of that rotation. But last couple scans still showing a little bit of some signs of weakenings, which is always something that we like to see. We have gotten some new severe thunderstorm warnings up towards the north, all the way up to Harrison. So this line is still holding together, especially across northern Arkansas. It looks like they're going to let this one at least go until 12:15. That's right now getting close to moving right into Benton. You can kind of see where that red and that green are, still trying to hold together a little bit, but just kind of falling apart right along I-30. So if you're still within this polygon, while it does look like it is starting to weaken a little bit, you got to stay in that safe space at least until 12:15, just to make sure, because there is still enough to hold this warning until 12:15. So be in that interior room if you live in Benton, be in that interior room if you live in Bryant, Alexander, or anywhere within that red polygon, at least for the next 5 minutes until this warning is able to expire. But the good news is we haven't had a new warning issued. Usually they'll issue one downstream within the next couple minutes if they're going to, but we just have that severe thunderstorm warning that includes portions of the metro downstream of this tornado warning. So that makes me think that they probably won't have another tornado warning coming, which is some good news. But if you're in the red polygon, you still have 5 minutes. Please stay in that safe space just to be safe until this one expires. And it looks like we do have another severe thunderstorm warning. They've just been popping up all evening, several of them up towards the north. The good news is no tornado warnings across northern Arkansas right now, but you can see close to Cabot, all the way up to Searcy, and then there's one even extending all the way up into the northeast corner of the state, Bald Knob. You can see how large these severe thunderstorm warnings are, just showing kind of the intensity of this line, and it's really starting to bow out all the way close to Newport, all the way up to Batesville, which kind of shows me that this is definitely looking like a wind threat across the northern part of the state. So might see some more power outages. If you haven't already, plug that phone in, make sure you are charged up just in case the power does go off. But we'll of course be sticking with this tornado warning until 12:15. I'll take another look at this velocity to see how things are looking. It's still a little bit of some rotation there. So yeah, definitely still be in that safe space. If you live in Benton, if you live in Bryant, all along I-30 is basically where this is traveling. Northeast, about 45 miles an hour is where this storm is moving. So we got about 3 minutes left. Stay in that safe space, at least for the next 3 minutes. Carmen?
Yeah, I would say earlier, the rotation with this looked a lot more impressive, a lot more menacing. That's clearly not the case anymore, but it's still indicating a little bit of something, right? It's 12:12 right now. We have another 2 minutes on this. Now, we're still going to stay with you breaking into programming, because the nature with these storms lately has been that we're still getting a little bit of spin up and rotation with them. And as this continues to approach Little Rock, we really want to stay here with you just in case we do get any additional warnings, and to, of course, put your mind at ease. And now we do have an RDOT cam up. I do want to point that out real quick, because on top of course, all the wind and the potential hail, we are dealing with torrential rain, and you can see that currently through these RDOT cams. We've been noticing that some of those hazards are on. This looks like I-30. I know my producer can probably speak to me in my ear here, but this does look like I-30. Benton, yeah, so perfect. This is exactly what we would expect. Obviously not perfect conditions out there. So very heavy rainfall, and we are dealing with that gusty wind too associated with that. So if you're familiar with the drive along I-30 through Benton, through Bryant, there's those hazards and some of those trucks as well, then this is the area where we are dealing with the strongest storm. So our drivers, you're going to be running into some issues here too, all the way along I-30. We can go ahead and switch on back to radar just so you can see exactly what we're talking about. Again, everything that's within this red polygon is that tornado warning. We still have those sirens likely going off here, and we do have a new tornado warning. So this is not going to, the original one will expire, but what this means is
downstream of that original one, just because it kind of looks like it's going through a cycle of weakening and then strengthening back up, which unfortunately is just something that can happen. A few scans can show some weakening, and then it can tighten back up just as quickly as it fell apart. So that's exactly what we're seeing for this tonight, and this new warning is moving up towards the north and the east. And you can see, if you've been watching our coverage for a little bit, how we started to see those less bright colors popping up, but now we're seeing those brighter blues right now moving right over Bryant. It's basically been riding right along I-30 over the last 10 to 15 minutes, and that's pretty much what it is doing as well. So within the red polygon, if you hear the sirens going off, you need to be in that safe space right now. Get as low as you can, get away from those windows, and if your power goes off, we've seen some pretty strong winds. We're streaming this on Facebook. It's also on our app. Turn the volume up as loud as you can on your TV and go into an interior room or a closet, and we'll continue to track this. But do have that new warning that we're going to stick on it. It looks like it's pretty much going right through Bryant right now, and pretty much it's been running right along I-30 is where I'm seeing it right along the map. So if you live in Alexander as well, need to be in that safe space right now because that's where the storm is headed. I'm going to put a new track on this one since we just got an update. Let me get a closer look. I think it's still moving up towards the northeast. Yeah, about 50 miles an hour, which is pretty much what we've been tracking them all this evening. So we'll get a new track, and then Carmen can call out some names here so everyone can know where the storm is headed.
Yeah, and this is not what we like to see, of course. Julianne had just pointed out the tightening and a little bit more intensification, of course, of that rotation. So once we start to notice those brighter colors. Again, Bryant, this is likely over you right now. You need to be in your safe spot if you're not in there already. Geyer Springs, 1242. It's 1217 right now. Little Rock, 12:55. If you're joining us, we are breaking into regular scheduled program. We've been doing this for some time now because of this tornado threat. If you just heard your phones go off, if you're hearing sirens, it's because we have a tornado warning. So we're looking at a time frame again, 12:55 for you all. It's 12:18. So I'd say we have about 30 minutes. You need to go ahead and get your safe place ready. Be in it. North Little Rock, 101. Rose City, 107. Sherwood, 113. This is tracking farther north and east, so this is going to be making its way, again, basically up I-30, making its way toward Alexander, toward Geyer Springs, Little Rock, North Little Rock, Sherwood, Galloway, 120, Jacksonville, 134 for you all. Again, what we've noticed is kind of some ebbs and flows as far as the tightness of this rotation and the intensity of the rotation, but it's still enough that we're noticing enough rotation that we could still have a tornado produced out of this thunderstorm. And that's going to continue making its way farther north and east. Here's I-30 right now, and now Benton, you're on the backside of this. So this has already moved through you all. Bryant, you're now our big focus here. Alexander, Shannon Hill, Redgate, Terrytown, Mableville. There's 5 right here. Bryant Parkway, right, as we get closer to I-30 as well. Alexander Road, Vimy Ridge, Mableville, that's going to be heading up your way. Chico Road, King Road, Butler Lake. Basically, if you live in Bryant or Alexander, this is making its way on top of you right now. This storm that is producing some rotation. Again, we don't have any confirmation of anything on the ground right now, but we're still noticing that rotation here as that continues to move through Bryant, past Bryant Parkway. Now it's going to be moving towards Shannon Hills and Mableville, that rotation. Let's zoom out a little bit more just so we can get in relation to where we are and get a better picture of where that rotation is. Everybody in this red polygon that does include us into Little Rock and North Little Rock is under a tornado warning. Juliana, can you get a query up so we know exactly when this warning is expiring? This is the new warning. This is until 12:45. It is 12:20 right now. That previous warning was until 12:15. This is the new one, and it has been extended farther north and east. So prior to this, Little Rock was not under the warning. Little Rock, you are now under the warning. Again, nothing is confirmed here, but we do have that warning, and that's really what we were expecting along the line of these storms, just because there has been just enough rotation to indicate some concern that this could produce some tornadoes. We have a tornado watch in effect until 4 a.m. So it's going to be a long night for us, but stick with us with the Arkansas Storm Team. We are watching this. Pat Walker is in right now. We'll also have Joel, and we have Juliana. So you have 4 meteorologists right now. We're all watching the same storms. So if anything develops, you're going to know about it. Juliana, are we getting any sort of reports in Bryant? Because again, that's really where the bulk of this is moving through right now, and then it will be making its way farther north and east along I-30.
Looks like we haven't gotten any storm reports as far as damage in Bryant, but has been some chat in the National Weather Service chat just about how much storm energy is in that area and how it's kind of increased a little bit this evening, which is why I think the storm has had such an easy time falling apart, but then really regaining its speed within the last few scans, which is why we saw that new warning. As far as power outages, I've been watching them a little bit, and it does look like we're starting to see some of those in portions of Saline County. Unfortunately, so if you do lose that power, we're also streaming on the app and on Facebook. I haven't got any wind reports yet. That doesn't mean that we might not have seen some damaging wind gusts or some reports. Sometimes it's hard when it's at night, overnight, it's dark, people can't see as well. Those reports might not come in quite as fast, but did see that this tornado warn storm also could have hail up to the size of about 1 3/4 inches. So we're talking about even possibly a little bit bigger hail than what we were seeing with some earlier storms. Hail over the size of 1/4, about 1 inch, can already cause damage, so we could have some damage as far as hail goes. So you might be hearing some of that as well, even within the red polygon, because this cell that we are tracking, which is rotating, also packing a punch as far as winds, hail, and it has some heavy rain, as we saw on that RDOT camera as well. The last couple scans, we keep kind of going in and out of, and this is exactly what the National Weather Service was talking about, how it kind of recycles. It strengthens up a little bit, and then it starts to fall apart a little bit as well. So anywhere within the red polygon, you still need to be in that safe space at least until 12:45. Got about 20 minutes left of at least this warning. Probably hearing those sirens going off across the metro, College Station, all the way up to portions of Sherwood and Scott. Make sure you're in that safe space at least for the next 20 minutes, because we can still see kind of that rotation. I'll take a look at the map, and yeah, we're kind of still seeing a little bit of a hook out there, which is why probably this tornado warning, you can see where that rotation is. I'm also going to look at hail to see. There's been a little bit of some hail, quite not as impressive as the warning has, but again, you might be hearing a little bit of that hail coming down on your roof as well as that tornado warning. But of course, that rotation is our main concern right now, and we're seeing that pretty much right over Alexander is where that rotation is headed to Mablevale within the next few minutes. So you need to be in that safe space right now. And it looks like we continue to see more severe thunderstorm warnings. Another one was just issued. So even though we're tracking this severe thunderstorm very closely, a lot of activity happening across northern Arkansas with several severe thunderstorm warnings. So we have eyes on those as well. Carmen?
Oh yeah, this line has just been nasty, and we're starting to see a little bit more of that bowing out just outside of Searcy. So at the very least, we're talking about some very powerful wind with this. And as Juliana had mentioned, National Weather Service as well, just a ton of energy with these thunderstorms. Now we're in the 50s and 60s right now. It's after midnight, so we do have enough fuel for these thunderstorms, but it's not like how it is in the summertime where we have 80s and 90s, right? So it's very impressive that these storms are carrying this amount of energy, and it's concerning because we're starting to see some rotation with this, and we could have some damage reports in relation to hail as well as damaging wind. So that's what we do not like to see. The tornado warning that does include us into Little Rock is until 12:45 a.m. Benton, of course, in the metro, Little Rock, North Little Rock, Sherwood, Argenta, you're all under this warning here until 12:45. So this is for parts of Lonoke, Pulaski, and Saline counties. The sirens have actually been going off before this warning was issued into Little Rock and into the Heights and Hillcrest. You probably heard it as well. And now we actually have that tornado warning that is issued. This is the new one, the previous one until 12:15. So Bryant, you're now on the tail end of this. It's farther north and east over Mablevale, pardon me, as well as farther up onto I-30 as we get closer to the 30 and 430 junction here, that we're dealing with some of this rotation. So now we're getting closer to the outlets and Bass Pro. That's where we're starting to see this rotation right on top of you all. If you have any friends or family members driving along 430 or 30 toward Benton and Bryant or away from it or heading toward the southwest part of town, it's not going to be a good place to be on the roadways right now. Because we do have some of that rotation. Here's Chico Road. Here's I-30, here's Geyer Springs. So if you are in any of these areas, I want you to be in your safe spot. There's 65th, so this is south of us into Little Rock, and we're still noticing these brighter shades of dark blue as well as that very bright blue turquoise really, and that red along Shackelford and I-30. That's where we're seeing that rotation. Once we start to see those brighter colors, that's indicating more of that intensity of that thunderstorm and that rotation in general. So again, Geyer Springs, I-30, Shackelford. We're closer to basically the outlets here. If you're closer to shopping, if you've gone and done any sort of shopping over in this area, then you know exactly where we're talking about. This is now north and east of Alexander, making its way toward Geyer Springs. It's going to be making its way south of us into Little Rock. Here's the metro here. If you were downtown into Little Rock, that rotation just south, but it's heading north and east. So Little Rock, you still need to be into your safe place as we still are really noticing this rotation. 5:30, so now we're getting closer to our south interchange. So basically all of Little Rock here, we're dealing with this thunderstorm that could produce a tornado. Again, we don't have any confirmation as far as what we've heard so far, but it's 12:27 in the morning. We're not going to be able to see a whole lot here, but what radar is indicating is that rotation, and that's where we're starting to see, of course, where that green and even bright blue meets that red. That's where we're having some of that rotation that's going to continue to track farther north and east. Juliana, are you getting any reports with this?
Haven't gotten any damage reports as of yet, but as you said, overnight, it's dark outside. They don't always come in right away. Has been some talk in the chat about how the storm is weakened and come together again. So we've been watching it closely. I want to give everyone kind of a picture of maybe where you are. We'll zoom out a little bit just to take a closer look at the state so you can find out where your county is and what we're dealing with. And Bryant, you're still included in that tornado warning. That rotation has moved north of you. Stay in that safe space at least until 12:45. Sometimes they'll trim that up a little bit, but it's always better to just remain in the safe space while those sirens are going off. And you can see where those red and blue are coming together. Each scan is a little bit haphazard, where it comes together a bit and then it starts to fall apart a little bit. It does look like we did get an update from the National Weather Service, though, that they are going to extend that tornado watch a little bit. And you can see it now, it includes much of central and even into portions of eastern Arkansas. Still goes until 4 o'clock in the morning, but some counties have been added. If you were not in the tornado watch already, you might have been added to that. So just something to be aware of. And yeah, this one's still going to go until 4 o'clock in the morning as well. And it kind of just shows the strength of this line as it's moved through, still kind of having some rotation and still giving us some of these tornado warnings. So we'll go back into that tornado warning. It is now 12:30. If you're just now joining us, we have a tornado warning that is just south, or it includes the metro. That rotation is just south of the metro. If you live in the metro, you still need to be in your safe space because this kind of has a northeasterly track. And I'm going to go ahead and put a track on that so you can see exactly where that rotation is headed and who's going to be impacted. But taking a look at the map right now, if you're anywhere within the polygon, if you hear those sirens outside of your house, go ahead and get in that safe space right now. Let's put a new track on this storm. We can take a closer look at that.
Yeah, we still have those sirens going off that will continue to likely go off until 12:45 at the least, because we haven't had any word of this expiring early. In fact, it's a new warning from that original one that was in Benton and Bryant. Benton and Bryant, I think you can breathe in a sigh of relief. This is now north and east of you. Here in Little Rock, however, we want all eyes on this. We want you in your safe place. We want you paying attention to it. So as far as where that rotation is, just outside of Rose City, here's 6:30, here's Sherwood. Here's where our radar is. It's actually closer to Sherwood and closer to the North Little Rock Airport. So once we start getting right on top of that radar, it's a little bit harder detecting and deciphering these scans, but we still have that rotation here. As far as when it's going to arrive, Rose City, 12:38. Prothero Junction, so now we're getting a little bit farther east of Little Rock, 12:40. Galloway, 12:50. Kerr, 101. Union Valley, 109. Furlough, 118. Little Rock, Again, here's North Little Rock here. Here's Sherwood. Little Rock is right here. That rotation is just south of the metro. So it's basically right on top of us into Little Rock. So we want you in your safe place right now. Again, as Juliana has been mentioning, these storms have been pulsing. So what that means is they'll weaken, and then they'll strengthen and weaken and strengthen. And that still indicates a very unstable atmosphere here. And it's still indicating that we have that rotation, and we're still very concerned about this as this continues to track north and east. Again, no confirmation of a tornado on the ground. This wasn't like what we were dealing with in March, where we saw the tornado move through, where we saw our debris on our correlation coefficient, but we are seeing that rotation, and this is still a very serious situation. Again, this warning goes until 12:45 a.m. It is 12:32 right now. That rotation, the strongest part of that, again, just south of the metro here. Here's 367 Woodyardville, as well as College Station. Now we're getting closer to 440. That's going to be on the way toward the Little Rock Airport over the Arkansas River. I think Galloway, you're going to be right in this path as well. And then that will continue tracking farther north and east and eventually make its way closer to I-40. So this has been riding along I-30 basically this whole time. And now it's moving through closer to our south interchange and then making its way farther north and east closer to the Arkansas River and the Little Rock Airport. Here's that next scan, and we're still noticing some of that rotation. Again, here's where our radar beam is into North Little Rock, closer to the North Little Rock Airport. So again, once we get right on top of the radar like this, it's a little bit harder to decipher, but we're still seeing that rotation with that. Everybody in this polygon, again, you are under this tornado warning for the next 12 minutes here, 11 minutes until 12:45. Let's go ahead and switch back to radar so we can get the level of the intensity of precipitation. So we're dealing with some very heavy rain with this too. Again, if we're noticing that rotation, we're not going to be able to see much anyway because of that very heavy rainfall and because it is 12:34 in the morning. So this will continue to track farther north and east. I can see in the corner of my eye, I know we have an RDOT cam. If we can pull that up, this looks like Big Rock Interchange over onto 430. So here's a live look through RDOT into Little Rock, and you can see that lowered cloud deck here with that thunderstorm moving through. So it is looking very ominous out there. You can see as the lightning flashes, we can see that thunderstorm. Again, over onto the Big Rock Interchange through the RDOT cam. Let's see, that's some very intense lightning. I'm wondering if we can get another view through some of our RDOT cams. We'll go ahead and switch back to radar so we can get our producer on that. And you can really get a visual for what's going on outside. I know you're hearing probably the sirens still go on, hopefully, because we have a tornado warning in effect right now, but you're hearing the thunder, the lightning, your dogs, I'm sure they're not loving it right now. And unfortunately, this storm is just very intense, and we have some time that we are going to continue to deal with it. So we are really going to watch this closely here as we're still noticing that rotation. Didn't really love seeing that storm that we saw through the RDOT cam, that imagery there. So we want to watch this very closely here. We need everybody to take the proper precaution, make sure that they are in their safe place. This includes Sherwood and Jacksonville. You need to be prepared as well as that continues to track farther north and east. We just saw through our RDOT cam that lowered cloud deck with that thunderstorm and that very intense lightning. I'm wondering if I can toss over to Juliana. Are you getting any sort of reports into Little Rock with this storm?
Haven't gotten any wind reports yet, but I did get a report. Looks like we have some hail in North Little Rock as well. And starting to see, it looks like maybe some stronger winds in portions of Little Rock. Just got that on the chat as well. So you can kind of see how the bright colors of this map are starting to pulse up again. Just like Carmen was talking about, there was some talk in the National Weather Service chat about looking at maybe expiring this. They wanted to see a couple more scans. It is once again pulsed up again. So that's indicating some stronger winds that we're seeing right now. Also got those reports of hail. I was checking the hail a little bit earlier as Carmen was talking. It doesn't look like there's any massive hail out there, but we are getting those reports of P up to quarter size hail. So I know it's 12:30 at night. Hopefully not many people are driving, but if you are, try and stay off the roads at least for a little bit because we have the strong winds associated with this rotation and just the severe thunderstorm in general. There is some hail coming down and some heavy rain. And as we saw on that RDOT camera, also some pretty frequent lightning as well. So that's something that we'll have to watch for. So if you can, just stay off the roads because of that hail. But you can see where that rotation is. Looks like it's just southeast of the metro right now, pushing up towards the north and the east. It's moving at about 50 miles an hour. So Rose City, you need to be in that safe space right now. Radar loops are what has just happened. So likely moving into Rose City as we speak. You need to be in that safe space, as well as Galloway, be in that safe space as well. Pecan Grove, you need to be in your safe space all the way up until Valentine and close to Jacksonville. You can see where that polygon is. Anywhere within that polygon, you need to be in that safe space because we kind of continue to see this storm pulsing up a little bit and then losing its steam right now in downtown. Starting to hear some thunder out there. Gotten some reports of that hail continuing, and that storm still goes for another 17, 18 minutes as it is 12:37. If you're just joining us, our severe thunderstorm warnings continue, but that tornado warning is until 12:45. Carmen?
And Juliana, you mentioned something about, of course, being on the roadways. We still have drivers out there. If we want to pull out our RDOT cam right now, this is over onto I-30 and 65th, right? So south and east of us into the metro, and you can see that rain is torrential. We have some very strong wind as well. That, of course, is happening right now, but into Little Rock as well. Hazards are on those cars and on those trucks. When we're talking about very gusty wind out there for our 18-wheelers, this is going to be problematic for them as well. So wouldn't want to be on the roads right now. This is a live look through our RDOT cam again over onto I-30 and 65th south of us into Little Rock. Let's go ahead and switch on back to radar, and you can really see where everything's going on. Looks like we do have Brian, who's out here driving. He's on 30. South side of town, and he's got a great view here of that low cloud deck. So you can see through his windshield right now. That's what we're watching. That's the storm cell that is producing rotation. And if you're just looking through this live stream right now with Brian, you can really see how ominous that is. So that gives us a really good picture of that. Again, Pat, that's I-30. I-30 over there on the south side of town where we just saw all of that torrential rain as well. So we're watching that very closely. He's going to continue to stream this as we track that. Again, the rotation is just south of the metro, and he's going to be watching that very closely. So we'll continue to monitor this. That imagery that we just saw with it really highlighted that, and especially as we continue to see more lightning strikes, you can see that lit up. But the view is a little bit hard. It's obviously very dark out there, so it's hard to see this. Let's go ahead and switch on back to radar so we can see where the worst of that rotation is, and we can get a good idea for where Brian is too along I-30. Again, I know that wind is picking up here into Little Rock. You're probably hearing it along with that thunder and that lightning. Again, here's a look at our radar. This is giving us our radar reflectivity as far as the intensity of that rainfall. It's heaviest here into Little Rock. Any sort of that rotation now looks still south of us into the metro, but a little bit farther east, closer to Rose City. Here's Prothero Junction. Here's I-30. I'd say maybe if we have some of our trackers, they'll be making their way closer to I-40 now, or be traveling along 440 past the airport, over the river, and along onto I-40, and then making their way eventually over into Galloway. So I still want you in your safe spot here into Little Rock, because we're still dealing with very nasty weather, and we're still dealing with a storm that is indicating some rotation out there here as of 12:41. I'm wondering if we can switch back to our radar and then zoom out just a little bit. I want everybody to kind of see where we are. Again, Little Rock, we're still getting poured on right now, but if there's any rotation with this thunderstorm, it is now east of us. So that indicates that this storm is moving at a good clip here, closer to 50 miles per hour. Sherwood, Jacksonville, I know you're probably hearing a ton of that thunder and lightning. You're going to be dealing with some wind very shortly. Everybody within this polygon is under that tornado warning. Scott, you are under this tornado warning. That rotation is farther north of you, but you still need to be into your safe spot as well. It looks like we have our latest scan with our radar. Let's go ahead and switch on back to velocity to see where our rotation is with this. Again, we're still noticing that very bright green and very bright red. Red is away from North Little Rock in this instance, and green is toward. So that's when we're starting to get that counterclockwise rotation. This basically right on top of Prothero Junction and toward Galloway. So if you're used to basically driving from Little Rock farther east along I-40, then you know exactly where we're talking about here. That will continue to track farther north and east toward Galloway. I don't know if there's been any word about extending this tornado warning, because we are getting closer to our expiration at 12:45. Juliana, have you heard any word?
There was talk about how the last couple scans it's continued to weaken a little bit. They're going to watch for a couple more, but if it does continue to show this weakening, they're looking at maybe replacing this tornado warning with a severe thunderstorm warning. So in the next couple minutes, we'll probably get a better idea, but we're within 3 minutes of the warning, so they might just let it run out because of that, and then we might see another severe thunderstorm warning. But as of right now, it doesn't look like we're going to get a downstream warning, just because those blues that we were seeing are starting to kind of weaken a little bit, and you can see that rotation is just not quite as tight as it was, which was some good news. But as we saw in Brian's footage, you could kind of see where it looked like those clouds are really low. He said when we were texting that it looked like it was trying to lower right as you're going over the interstate, but it didn't, which was some good news, at least in the video that he was sharing with us. But you can kind of see that rotation starting to weaken maybe a little bit, so we'll have to watch a couple more scans and see if that National Weather Service is going to go ahead and just put us under a severe thunderstorm warning. Here comes a new scan. Yeah, kind of what we were seeing, a little bit less tight, a little bit weaker, and that's just indicative of those winds starting to calm down just a little bit as well. So we just have another minute and a half of this warning, so probably I expect us to see another severe thunderstorm warning coming up in just a minute or two, I bet.
Yeah, that latest scan, Juliana, really shows it weakening entirely almost. But again, these storms have been pulsing. They've been weakening, then they've been strengthening. But these past couple of scans have been more consistent in that weakening pattern. So that's what we like to see. This does look like it is starting to break apart. So that is some good news for us into Little Rock and North Little Rock. Again, this area of rotation is actually now closer to Rose City and east of us into North Little Rock and Little Rock. So let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit. I want to switch over to radar just so we can show where you are in relation to where this warning is. If you are tuning in, this is Arkansas Storm Team coverage. We have Pat Walker, Juliana Cullen here with the latest with tracking on this line. Again, we do have that warning that includes Little Rock. I know the sirens are likely still going off. We have another 10 seconds on this warning, and it looks like we do have a severe thunderstorm warning that has been issued farther north and east. Now behind this, notice how we don't have a whole lot on radar. A lot of that is already starting to quiet down, and there it is. That warning expired right at 12:45. So that's good news. I'm hoping those sirens have gone off because we are no longer under that warning. However, we still have severe thunderstorm warnings out here, and it's still looking rather potent farther north and east of Searcy here. The severe thunderstorm warning that has now been issued farther downstream is until 1:30 a.m. It is 12:45 right now. This includes parts of Lone Oak, Prairie, Pulaski, and White counties, Jacksonville, Little Rock, North Little Rock, Sherwood. You're under this, but this is all going to be moving out of here rather quickly. It's going to continue to track farther east along I-40. So Cabot, I know you're probably hearing a ton of thunder. You're seeing a lot of lightning. That wind is continuing to push on through. But I'm watching what's going on right here closer to Augusta and just east of Searcy. Now this looks like some pretty nasty wind that could be rolling on through, but we're not noticing that rotation. Juliana has switched on back to velocity to see if we're seeing in rotation with that, and based off of radar alone, that doesn't really look like it. But again, Bald Knob, Augusta, Georgetown, McCrory, you're dealing with some very intense thunderstorms, and we do have a warning on this. Juliana, have you gotten any sort of reports within these storms or from the warning, the tornado warning that we had just a minute ago?
It looks like we hadn't gotten any reports from that tornado warning, but we do have some hail reports close to Bald Knob and White County as well for about an inch size hail. And some of these new severe thunderstorm warnings that we've gotten, mainly across the northern part of the state, where we really see that blowing out, where that wind looks like it's intense and there's lots of lightning. We've gotten several of those warnings have been for higher hail totals, so 1.5 inches or 1.75 inches as far as hail. So you might be hearing some heavy hail or some heavy stones coming down on your roof right now. Good news is when I switched over to velocity, I'm really not seeing too much as far as that rotation. Does not mean that these aren't nasty storms, though, that are pushing up towards the north and the east right now. So something that we'll have to keep an eye on as we get these new scans. But it does look like mainly we're looking at wind and hail with these severe thunderstorm warnings that are tracking. These are pretty much due east across northern Arkansas, and I'll get you some timelines on these. That first one we're looking at for portions of Jackson, Prairie, White, and Woodruff County. This is going to go until 1:15 a.m. So you have about 30 minutes as the storm pushes east at about 50 miles an hour. And just up towards the north of that as well, we have another small severe thunderstorm warning. Also goes until 1:15, includes portions of White and Woodruff County. That's where we got that report in White County of up to about an inch size of hail that was falling. Also have another severe thunderstorm warning just up towards the north of that. This one goes for another about 15 minutes, portions of Craighead County, and goes until 1 a.m. And all of these are warned for damaging wind gusts up to about 60 miles an hour and hail that could be anywhere from the size of 1 inch to 1.5 inches in diameter, which is big enough to do damage. But so far, just looking at a line of severe thunderstorm warnings for right now. A little bit of some activity behind this main line that we're going to keep an eye on, but it looks like right now nothing is warned behind these storms, just some general thunderstorms. So just this main line that we're watching for right now. Carmen?
Oh, yeah. So we can all like breathe in a little bit. That's nice that we don't have the tornado warning anymore, but we still have a tornado watch until 4 a.m. So it's not quite smooth sailing yet. We have another couple hours here, but the tornado warning for Little Rock, North Little Rock, Sherwood, that has expired on time. You do not need to still be in your safe spot right now. You don't need to wake up the kids and take them down to the basement or into the coat closet for that safe spot away from those windows, but we still have some intense thunderstorms out there. And even though that is not including Benton or Bryant anymore, but we're still dealing with the wind and the hail threat, as Juliana had just mentioned. So along this line, it looks like the most potent ones are outside of Searcy right now, headed toward McCrory and Beadville, and then a little bit farther north and east, closer to Truman. So it's all along this line where we're seeing all of these yellow, orange polygons indicating those severe thunderstorm warnings. So we could be still dealing with hail and wind damage associated with this. And now we're really starting to see this bow out. So at the very least, we're dealing with some very intense wind. And now Juliana has switched this over to our hail size, and we don't like seeing that. Your favorite color might be purple or dark blue, but we don't like seeing that on our hail size monitor, because what that indicates is some large hail is likely. So over the size of a quarter, 1.6 inches, so maybe about the size of a ping pong ball. That's going to be enough if that's actually reaching the ground to cause damage to your car, to your roof, to your yard, to you if you're outside. So I hope nobody is outside right now, because we are dealing with that intense line of thunderstorms. So if we are seeing that large hail, it's between Augusta as well as Gregory. And that's why we're also getting such a good return of all those bright colors on radar as well. Once we start seeing that very bright fuchsia, that really indicates a very good reading from radar, indicating something very large falling out of the sky, and that indicates hail. So we're seeing multiple tools here indicating that hail, and that's just outside of Augusta. Again, as reference, here we are into Little Rock. We just had a tornado warning that expired at 12:45. We are no longer under that tornado warning, and that severe thunderstorm warning is now inching off there toward our east. I think those storms, I should say, in that warning will continue to push away from us into Little Rock. We're really concerned about this line now that's a little bit farther north and east. Juliana, are you getting any reports from that hail reading that we saw on radar closer to Augusta?
The only hail report so far I got very close to that in Bald Knob, so just off towards the west of Augusta. So that tells me that that hail reading that we're getting in Augusta is likely pretty close to accurate. That reading or the report that we got from a train spotter in Bald Knob was hail up to the size of an inch, so about a quarter in diameter, which is enough to cause damage to property, or like Carmen said, you if you're outside. So please be inside and away from windows, because this hail core that we're seeing in Augusta does look like it is fairly large. It might not be quite as big as it's coming down a little bit, but the readings that we're getting, at least from the radar here, look like it could be over the size of at least an inch. So that's why we're also seeing this severe thunderstorm warning continue, not really seeing rotation with this storm, which is good news, but that doesn't mean that the storm isn't damaging just because it's not rotating and we don't have a tornado warning. Still has those damaging wind gusts, and this one has quite the hail that's associated with it. This storm is moving due east, so this hail headed toward Augusta, probably impacting that as well, and headed towards Pumpkin Bend, right along, it looks like Highway 64. So if you live along there, might start to hear some hail. Just make sure you're away from those windows as that hail starts to come down, because it's pretty much been holding together fairly well within the last few scans. Hopefully we see that fall apart, but it looks like that one has a pretty good hail core. That's the only hail report I've gotten so far, but I imagine if this sticks together, we'll probably continue to see one. It looks like I did just get one report in from the storm that moved through Little Rock of a wind gust up to 65 miles an hour in West Little Rock. So might have some wind damage. I can check on those power outages as well to see if we're starting to see some. Doesn't look like there's a few in Pulaski County. It looks like about over 1,000 customers are without power in Pulaski County, but those higher counties continue to be. Garland County was hit pretty bad, over 3,500 customers without power. So these winds and a little bit of hail still impacting some of that. So 65-mile-per-hour wind gusts. And West Little Rock was the one we got reported from that storm that moved through just a little bit ago, Carmen.
Yeah, 65-mile-per-hour wind gusts, that's nothing to mess around with. If you think about when you drive your car 65 miles per hour, that's what we're dealing with earlier with these storms. So they're very intense. And Juliana has been pointing out where we're noticing some of that hail there. Now, earlier, we saw hail that looked like nickel to quarter size up into Pottsville and Pope County. They were dealing with some of that hail closer to Russellville here. And what was indicated on the map was only gray. Now we're starting to see blue. So that's what fell earlier this evening at 8:30. It actually looks like we got snowed on with hail over there into Pottsville. Ashley sent this in, and you can see based off of her hand, anywhere from, I'd say, even pea size up to quarter size hail with this. And so that really also indicates the strength of these storms. In order to produce hail, we need a very strong updraft. And normally we get that in summertime and springtime when we have a lot warmer temperatures. But we had 60-degree temperatures and 50s, and that produced hail in wintertime. So that really tells you how strong these thunderstorms are, and also radar is still indicating that. Now, here in Little Rock, I know if you're still tuned in, again, we are no longer under that tornado warning. You may be wondering, well, are we going to be dealing with any more additional rounds of thunderstorms? Can I go to bed? Well, Juliana, if you can zoom out for us, we can answer that question for you right now. We do have more showers and thunderstorms that are behind this, but they're not nearly as intense. So yes, it's 12:55 right now. I know that we have our tornado watch until 4 a.m., but that doesn't mean we're going to have tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings until 4 a.m. It just means that we have the ingredients to produce those thunderstorms. I would say what rolled through just now into Little Rock is the most potent line of thunderstorms out there. And behind it, yes, we still have some thunderstorms out there, and we still want to watch these through 4 a.m. They're not nearly as intense as what just rolled through. So what my advice would be right now is to still stick with us here, have that volume up, have our Arkansas storm team, but don't be as worried as what we were dealing with just now. Again, that was the most intense of those storms, but still stick with us here because we still are watching these storms. And for those of you who live north and east of us in Little Rock, we really want you to pay attention because we still have active warnings on these cells here that are continuing to push farther east. Even what we're seeing seeing farther west of us, closer to Conway, those aren't warned, but we'll still have some rain and thunder with them. Again, it's really this reading that we're getting right here, the very, very bright pink indicating either torrential rain or hail, or probably both, based off the nature with these storms. The other thing is we're noticing that bright blue and darker blue still on this reading with our hail size. So that indicates over an inch. Again, you saw that hail that we showed into Pottsville earlier. That was only indicating gray on our radar scan. Now that we're starting to see blue, I think that's indicating a lot more likely that we're actually getting some of that larger hail falling to the ground over there into Augusta and outside of Bald Knob. This is going to continue to push farther east. Now let's switch over to velocity and see if there's any sort of rotation. And I'm not really seeing a whole lot with this scan. Juliana is looking very closely here, and she's actually manning our radar. And we're not really seeing a whole lot as far as this storm with Augusta. Now, we're noticing over in Jacksonville some brighter green down there, but that doesn't look really like rotation to me. That could be some stronger wind associated with that. Again, when we notice the strongest rotation, it's when one will have kind of those psychedelic colors on here, that very bright turquoise and even very dark blue mixed in with that red. When we're seeing green and red and they're not right next to each other, then that doesn't indicate as much tightening nor as much intensity, but still something worth keeping an eye on. That's actually the most that I see based off of the scan, not based off closer to Bald Knob where we're actually getting some of that hail. Juliana, have there been any other reports though within these warnings that we're watching?
Looks like we have gotten some reports of inch-size hail in Faulkner County as well. That one just came in. And just like Carmen was saying, as we look at the velocity map, it shows us the winds. I think that storm that moved through the metro and now is moving through Jacksonville looks like it's more of a wind threat as far as the storms, and the storms across the northern part of the state not picking up on quite as wind, but it looks like the hail threat is a little bit higher as well. So both severe thunderstorms, both that need to be still taken seriously, so still be staying away from those windows if you're able to, not driving around in these storms, especially with the heavy rain and those winds making those roads really wet out there and slick, and seeing that larger hail as well. But as these storms continue to get warned, or we get an update on the warning, the ones across northern Arkansas continue to be warned for that hail threat. So that looks like the main threat right now, especially across the northern part of the state, close to Augusta and moving into Pumpkin Bend as well, is going to be that hail threat. And the one just moving out of Jacksonville and getting closer to Cabot in this severe thunderstorm warning looks a little bit more like it's just going to be a wind threat. We did get some reports earlier as it was moving through North Little Rock of some of that smaller hail, so pea-sized to quarter size, so there could still be some hail, but it doesn't look like that hail core is going to be quite as large. So until 1:30, it looks like mainly more of a wind threat for portions of Lonoke, Prairie, Pulaski, and White counties as the storm continues to move up towards the north and the east. But good news is I'm just not really seeing any tightening as far as that rotation goes. It just looks more like straight line winds and damaging wind gusts with that. So that's good news. Carmen.
News. Yeah, this line has just been really intense here since 8:30 this evening. And we started with that tornado warning that included Mayflower as well as Conway earlier tonight. That was before midnight. And then we had that additional tornado warning that included Benton and Bryant, Alexander, and then